Bro, you got this shit handed to you. You got Dana White privilege.
What is up, guys? The doctor is back in the office, and today I'm going to be recapping and reacting to the UFC 324 and UFC 325 fight news. I was going to do a video yesterday right after I got home from fucking the Thanksgiving feast, but I was like, I don't want to give a half-ass video. I'm tired. But if you called me yesterday, you would have seen a much angrier me, because I was saying the UFC is literally the WWE right now. This is Triple H ass at matchmaking. And Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett, in the moment I was furious. I'm like, how the fuck does Paddy Pimblett get a title shot over like an Arman Saruki? And I know this is interim, but you know what I mean. And the one we'll get into later in this video, fucking Volk versus Diego Lopes. That's atrocious, but whatever. We're gonna start off with UFC 324, breaking down kind of what's been announced for that. It's gonna be a stacked card, but still. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and let's get into this. And listen, somebody needs to find Arman Saruki and make sure he is still with us, that he hasn't fucking jumped off of a building or jumped into a train. You know what I mean? Because he could be dead. I do feel somewhat bad for him, but it is kind of funny how Justin Gaethje threatened retirement for months and caused the UFC to bend the knee, and now he has a title shot. Like, Paddy Pimblett's one thing. Like, to a degree, do I understand the Paddy Pimblett thing? Yes, he's this younger prospect. He has this massive fan base, but Justin Gaethje is old, and we've kind of seen what we need to see from Justin Gaethje. Paddy Pimblett, at least there's something exciting, and I have zero interest in a Justin Gaethje versus Ilia Topuria matchup. Like, there's no interest. Like, I think both these two dudes probably get steamrolled by Ilia anyway, but at least Paddy Pimblett, there's like a little bit of intrigue. And, you know, again, back to the Arman point, he literally called out Ilia Topuria, said he's ready to fight. Ilia has all these things with his family. Again, I'm not really going to dump on him too much. That fight was heavily rumored, or this fight was heavily rumored. And I was actually going to make a video ripping on Ilia Topuria because the guy has no injuries, but he never fights. Now it seems like, he's not seeing his daughter. His wife took the daughter. I'm not really going to get into a guy's family problems. I don't want the fucking Georgians and the Spaniards coming after me. But listen, hopefully he comes back in April or March and is ready to kick one of these dudes' ass. But this is still a very fun fight. You know, it makes perfect sense in terms of a marketing perspective, because you're starting off the Paramount card. Justin Gaethje's a star that casuals know who he is. Everybody knows who Paddy Pimblett is. And Arman, listen, I think he is exciting. Like, he has really fun finishes and really fun fights in the UFC. But, you know, he pulls out of the fight against Islam Makhachev, and Dana is still holding that against him. And Dana White is clueless. Like, realistically, I think Paddy versus Arman would have been a better matchup, and honestly could have been just as hyped up if the UFC fucking did their job and promoted a fight. But I understand it from getting two box office stars. Arman isn't really a box office guy. And honestly, I think they probably had this as the co-main for UFC 324 before all this Ilia stuff come out. I think they initially were probably going to do Ilia versus Arman Sarukian, and then Ilia comes out back to the UFC telling him all about, you know, I have these issues in my personal life that I have to handle. And they're like, all right, whatever. So they already had this fight signed. They throw it up for the interim. That's my opinion. Don't take it as fucking hard. But Ilia's family's falling apart, so what are you gonna do? Listen, I think this is essentially a useless fight, though, because both these two dudes are going to get smashed by Ilia Topuria. And I do feel bad for Arman to a degree, but this guy ruined a pay-per-view, and then he sat on his ass for a year complaining that he deserved the title shot and wouldn't fight once. He didn't take a Gamrot fight, like a second Gamrot fight. He didn't fight Dan Hooker until recently. And I see both sides of the coin here. Like, he still is the second best lightweight, you know what I mean? Right behind Ilia Topuria. And it's probably the only dude who I think has an actual chance of beating him. But it's like, now that he's beat Dan Hooker, like, when is this guy getting a title shot? Because you're going to have this interim. Then at best, you're getting Ilia back in April. And then Ilia beats Paddy, or probably Paddy Pimblett. And then you're in a position where Arman Sarukian's going to be sitting on his ass again. You know, what is, in my opinion, here's what Arman Sarukian's going to have to do. He's going to have to fucking fight BSD later in this year, or fucking Gamrot. Like, I don't think he's getting a title shot this year, because Ilia, listen, once he beats one of these dudes, he's probably hunting for that Islam matchup. Whether that happens or not, who knows? Arman, I guess, is the second best thing, but I don't think Arman Sarukian's getting a title shot anytime soon. And it's so funny how fucking BSD versus Arman Sarukian is like a legitimate matchup that's going to have to be made. So, whatever. And listen, I've been shouting at the sky, talking about how Paddy Pimblett doesn't deserve a title shot. You know, he has no good wins. He beat Michael Chandler, who was number 7 at the time, which people forget, man, even though like Michael Chandler had to won a fight in 3 or 4 fights, and listen, he lost to like all champions or championship caliber guys like Poirier. I don't even know if these are all in the same type here, but you know, Poirier, Gaethje, Charles twice. Like, he had lost to all legit fucking dudes. And they gave Islam Makhachev a title shot after beating fucking Bobby Green. So everybody wants to get on Paddy Pimblett for not beating anybody. They gave Islam Makhachev a title shot after beating Bobby Green, who I know people forget, man, was good, but fucking doesn't make it's the same point, you know what I mean? Like, Charles Oliveira got another shot against Ilya after beating Michael Chandler. You know what I mean? Like, and also I guess it was a slightly better version of Michael Chandler, but you get the point. Like, and I think Paddy Pimblett's going to win this matchup, and that's what the UFC wants. Like, I think he's going to sub him. His BJJ is a lot better than Justin Gaethje. I'm interested in this matchup because Gaethje's old, and, you know, I feel like this Paddy Pimblett win is written in the stars. Like, he kind of has plot armor, and do I think he still gets knocked out by Ilia Topuria? Yes, but there's no world where I see Justin Gaethje beat Ilia Topuria. There is a world, I guess, maybe not in this life. I don't think in this life that we live right now, but there is a world where he could beat Ilia Topuria. Like, Scousers don't get knocked out. This guy is just, I don't know. He's just fucking a UFC plant. There's definitely Dana White privilege, I guess, to a degree that he gets here, but at the same time, it's like, what else were they going to do here for the interim? Was it going to be Charles or Max? You know, it should be Armin, but, you know, there's not that many other options outside of that. So it's like, this makes sense from a marketing perspective. Paddy versus Ilya, you know, if Paddy Pimblett beats Gaethje, or when Paddy Pimblett beats Gaethje, that keeps the lightweight division still really fun. I mean, the fucking press conferences would be actually electric. Has a lot of juice behind it. And Gaethje versus Ilya is a matchup that, who the fuck does that interest whatsoever? And Ilya, I'll say this, he's still kind of gay, because he's kind of ducking Arman Tsarukyan still, and been calling for Paddy Pimblett this whole time. Like, I particularly haven't really liked that. But again, this isn't an Ilia Topuria video. I'm not going to shit on the guy for his marriage and his life falling apart at home. But either way, I think this is still going to be a really fun fight. I lean towards Paddy Pimblett just being younger, his chin's still there. Just better BJJ, kind of more well-rounded at this point. I think it's just kind of, I don't know. I just think this is plot armor, and I think it's written in the fucking stars. I can't really see a world where Justin Gaethje versus Ilya happens. And if it does happen, it would end in 2 seconds. At least Paddy Pimblett, there's a little bit of intrigue there. Shit, maybe he flukes something. I don't think Justin Gaethje has a fucking chance. Moving on to the co-main, Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes. Now, listen, I'm so happy this isn't the fucking main event, because it was rumored for a while that this was going to be the main event. I mean, Ariel Helwani was saying it. And I think Kayla wins this. I'm hoping this isn't like a Valentina Shevchenko versus Weili Zhang, or Zhang Weili kind of matchup. You know, I just don't want to see Amanda Nunes a champ again, where she's fighting fucking random women off the street of Brazil, and that's racking up title defenses against. I think Kayla Harrison, she's just younger. She can kind of mog, you know, Amanda Nunes in the grappling and kind of fuck her up. You know, Amanda Nunes is just going to come out here swinging, try and land something big. And I just think Kayla Harrison out grapples her. And these two also don't really like each other, so I think there is some interest here. It's not really like as much a mutual respect as like a Shevchenko and Weili matchup. And listen, that Weili matchup did a lot of damage to women's MMA because it was so hyped up. They're more skilled than Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes. And it absolutely was a dud. I still think this can be a great fight. I hope it's a great fight because I would love to see a highlight. I like Kayla Harrison. She's very good. And Amanda Nunes obviously is also very good. I think there'll be a finish here. I think Kayla Harrison I could see submit Amanda Nunes. But so happy this isn't the main event. I am perfectly fine with this being the co-main event. Moving on. Sugar Sean, baby. This fight was rumored for months. I'm happy to see Sean O'Malley fight a guy that's not a Marab. You know, I'm happy kind of that he's going to be in a matchup where it's mostly purely striking. Like, Song Yadong can mix up his wrestling, but he's not some fucking elite grappler. And Sean O'Malley, if he's not fighting Marab, is the best of the best, you know what I mean? And outside of a Cheeto Vera fluking a fucking win where Sean O'Malley's legs stop fucking working, he's pretty much, he wins every single fight. Like, Song, again, he'll mix in the wrestling. He's not that elite level grappler of like an Umar or Marab where he can mog Sean O'Malley in the grappling. And Sean O'Malley he's had improved takedown defense, preparing for Marab and preparing for Aljamain Sterling. And in a 3-round fight, I feel like he can kind of let himself go through a ton of output in this fight. I think it's tough for Song Yadong. This is a guy who, he has no clutch gene whatsoever. The guy lost to Petr Yan, lost to Corey Sandhagen. He just never wins the big fights. Like, he's a great fighter. Like, I like Song Yadong. Like, there is interest in a Merab versus Song Yadong match, in my opinion. Like, I wouldn't be mad if that were to happen, just because I want to see, another new face fights Merab. But Sean O'Malley, I think, is still leagues better than Song Yadong. And Song, he has a great chin. He has a tough, overhands. But again, I think O'Malley is just, he's going to snipe him from range, kind of just pick him apart throughout the fight, win a really close, I think a close decision. But, I just think, again, Sean O'Malley is better. And if he wins this, what do you do with Sean O'Malley? You probably match him up against Petr Yan in the rematch, because there was a lot of controversy behind that. Or in my opinion, you go give him to Corey Sandhagen. They fight for the greatest white UFC fighter in the UFC, or at least in the bantamweight division. So Corey versus Sean is an option, or Yan versus O'Malley is also an option, because you can't give this guy an immediate trilogy with Merab, because he's gotten destroyed. He's gotten manhandled in the last 2 fights, and I would give Umar the title shot over him, just because we know how close that is. There's a real rivalry. A lot of buzz between those two dudes. So that's kind of where I'm looking. I kind of lean Sean O'Malley winning this by a decision. Song Yadong's obviously a guy that I have a lot of respect for, but I just don't think he can't win the big fights. And Sean O'Malley, we've seen him win big fights before, and outside of Merab, nobody really beats this dude. So moving on, below the feature fight, we have I hear voices in the air. This is literally Muhammad Ali versus Mike Tyson, John Cena versus The Rock. This is as good as it gets from the heavyweight division. And when Waldo Cortes-Acosta slimed out Shamil Gaziev, why did I never think of Derrick Lewis as an option? Maybe it was because I was like, he's not going to fight down in the rankings. I was like, Curtis Blades, but Curtis Blades is hurt. Could he get a Pavlovich rematch? And maybe. I was kind of leaning Volkov, because I was like, maybe Volkov fights Waldo Cortes-Acosta. But this actually makes perfect sense, because Derrick Lewis destroys every single hype train and up-and-comer in the division. But I don't really see him doing this, because Waldo Cortes-Acosta isn't some random jobber or like really back half of the heavyweight division in the rankings. This guy has proven himself to be really good, can mix up the grappling, can mix up the striking. He's not a Brazilian taxi driver. So Derrick Lewis isn't going to just fucking sleep him, in my opinion. And I think he's probably going to respect Waldo Cortes-Acosta's power and maybe be a little bit scared to kind of, let it go against him, because we've seen Derrick Lewis have some stinkers before where he doesn't really do a ton, and he is patient. And, I think either way, somebody could just fluke a right hand in this, but I kind of lean Waldo just by having a little bit more output and winning like a close decision. I'm definitely worried about Derrick Lewis's power. I mean, if Derrick Lewis fucking knocks out Waldo Cortes-Acosta, then you're like, shit, this guy, him versus Tom Aspinall is an intriguing matchup. Like, just in terms of Derrick Lewis is a name in the heavyweight division that everybody knows. But Waldo, I think, is skilled enough to beat Derrick Lewis. He's not some fucking Brazilian jobber by any means. So, again, this is a really fun fight, though. I'm happy to see Derrick Lewis back in the picture. Just coming off a big knockout over Taliesin Teixeira. He's fighting one of the, most hyped up guys in the heavyweight division right now, Waldo Cortes-Acosta. This should be a banger of a fight. Moving on to the opening bout of the main card. Arnold Allen making his return, and he's fighting John Lord Silva. We knew this was happening. I mean, this has been rumored for a couple weeks. I'm so happy that the fucking legend himself, Arnold Allen, is back. He's not moving up to lightweight, which I think is cool right now. If he loses this, he cannot. I think he can go on a run there. I really like Arnold Allen. I lean him in this fight. I know he hasn't fought forever, but his only 2 losses in the UFC are Max and Movsar. He's so well-rounded. Everybody knows how talented he is. And again, Silva's very good. And I think this is going to be a very close back-and-forth fight. But I kind of just lean Allen based on, just being more experienced. Could I see a world where, Silva wins? Because Arnold Allen hasn't fought in what's going to be coming up on 2 years, and, John Silva being more active. Yeah, I could see that, but I think this is going to be a back-and-forth war where both guys, a lot of blood. It's going to get ugly. But I lean towards Arnold Allen taking this fight just by being overall better. I think this is still a big step up in the rankings for John Silva. I know he just fought Diego Lopes, so you're like, Doc, what are you talking about? Like, I kind of figured he'd fight like a Steve Garcia or somebody who's, 8, and John Silva's 11. Like, that's a reasonable fight. Like, if you're Steve Garcia, you get to beat up this hyped up, big name that everybody knows in the division. And if you're Silva, you get to beat a guy, again, who's well-respected in the division, is on a really nice hot streak right now. And you get to take out a guy 3 spots ahead of you. That's kind of where I was leading. But Arnold Allen, I think, wins this just more well-rounded, and the fighting nerds have, outside of Carlos Prates, have all been struggling. They all seem to just take oral loss after oral loss. So I'm going to take Arnold Allen by a very close decision. And then also on the prelims of this card, let's see if I can pull it up. Prelims of this card, we had Umar and Davison Figueiredo. This is also wild that this is going to be like the fucking prelim opener. He called this Figgy out after he beat Mario Batista, and I just feel bad for Figgy because he kind of has this performance against Montel Jackson where you're like, you know, was it the prettiest performance? No, but I honestly thought he was going to lose just because Montel Jackson was, you know, slightly younger, and I just figured Figgy was washed. But he, you know, he looked solid and like he did well in the grappling exchanges in that fight. Like it wasn't the prettiest one, but he got it done. And I like this for Umar because it kind of keeps him active and kind of can match Merab's activity to a degree. Like he's going to destroy Davison Figueiredo, in my opinion. I think Figgy is pretty much done. It's one thing to beat a Montel Jackson. It's another thing to beat a guy who actually, you know, if Merab didn't exist, would be the champion. So I'm going to take Umar to win this. Shit, he might be able to get a finish against Davison Figueiredo. I just think it's over for Figgy. But whatever, you know, he had a great career. Whatever. Moving on, though, let's talk about UFC 325. And this is disgusting level matchmaking. I mean, there was no controversy in this first fight whatsoever. Volk 4-1 Diego Lopes. And I get Diego Lopes fucking, you know, dropped Volk. Like, he had moments in the fight, and don't get me wrong, like, I'm super excited to watch this. Diego Lopes is probably one of my 5 favorite fighters. Like, Volk is my GOAT. But Volk outclassed him in that first fight. And I understand this is the money fight, and Movsar and Lerone Murphy aren't the biggest names, but those two dudes are undefeated. Like, Movsar is an undefeated Dagestani. Volk gets his revenge against Dagestan. Like, that's a intriguing matchup to happen in Australia. And listen, the UFC is doing one of two things, and I think it's going to be the second thing I name. I think they're trying to ride Volk off into the sunset against a guy that he's already beaten handedly. Or, and this is kind of what I think, they're just expecting Diego Lopes to chin Volk, and they're trying to set up a, you know, really exciting champion for the future of the division and have a Mexican star again. Because you kind of run the risk with Movsar Evloev, where he's a decision merchant, like, albeit very good and elite. He never fights, and he actually could just smudge Volk and beat him. And that would be bad for business if Movsar is the champion. You know, Lerone isn't super marketable either. But listen, Lerone stepped up when Movsar, you know, calls out of the Aaron Pico fight and gets a highlight reel finish. And I get the wins before that against Josh Emmett and Dan Ige. Like, you're not like, ooh, like he beat a wash Josh Emmett. Like, nobody really, like, I don't really care. I've never really been a Lerone Murphy guy. But, you know, he still got that highly real spinning elbow against Aaron Pico, who, you know, if Aaron Pico had finished or beat Lerone Murphy, they would have been trying to prop him up as fighting Volk. But I just am frustrated because, you know, Volk, this is either going to be his last fight or his second to last fight. Like, this does nothing for his legacy to beat Diego Lopes in a rematch. Diego Lopes even said it himself. Hold on, I'll pull the quote up here. Like, I think Lerone, like, when they were asking about who he thinks should fight next to the title, he said, I think Lerone Murphy, he did a great job in the last fight. I think he deserves to fight for the title. But he feels bad for Movsar. Like, there are other options. Like, Diego Lopes, like, I don't blame him for taking this chance. He could chin Volk and finish him. But we just saw this matchup happening. There was no controversy behind it. It adds nothing to Volk's legacy. You know, at least if he beats a Lerone or a Movsar, it's another fucking name that he can put in his cap and kind of solidify himself as the featherweight GOAT, which he is the featherweight GOAT. Like, it doesn't really matter what happens in this fight, in my opinion, but at least it gives him one more name to add to this list. And shit, like, even Aljamain Sterling, like, obviously I have a little bit of bias for him because we're both from Long Island, but he's 2-1 at featherweight. He has a claim. Like, he beat Calvin Kattar in his featherweight debut, just beat Brian Ortega, lost a really exciting fight to Movsar, and Volk himself also said that Lerone and Movsar were more deserving, but the UFC wants Diego. They want that Mexican superstar, and I understand it. But, like, him beating Jean Silva, Diego Lopes beating Jean Silva, like, how much more is that proof? He didn't, like, he was getting pieced up in that fight. I get it. Like, he has the sick block chin. Jean Silva's good. But, like, he didn't show that much more improvement in that fight when he just ate a bunch of shots and then spinning elbow John Silva in the second round when he was getting pieced up. Like, it's kind of a disgrace, and I'm mad because Diego Lopes should realistically fight a Movsar or Yair Rodriguez and then let Lerone fight Volk. I'm fine with, honestly, not letting Movsar fight. The guy never shows up. But Lerone Murphy got that knockout, you know, that highlight reel knockout finish over Aaron Pico. I would have just thrown him in here and said, fuck it, just give Volk a different option. I get Lerone Murphy could have beat Volk, but of all the 3 matchups, Like in terms of, Lopes are our most confident beats Volk, just in terms of he has the style where he can beat Volk, you know, elite level grappler. Diego Lopes could chin him. I don't think Lerone Murphy would chin Volk, but I just think that in terms of lowest outcome of Volk getting embarrassed, I would have just done Lerone Murphy. And again, that point might have made no sense. I'm fucking rambling here. Again, this is within a day of learning about this, but Lerone Murphy at the very least, like again, stepped up to fight Aaron Pico, who again the UFC would have fucking built up Aaron Pico and said he should have fought Volk. If Lerone Murphy had lost that fight, it got finished. They dropped the ball with how they've handled Volk. Like, and I get he had injuries after the first Diego Lopes fight, but this dude should have been fighting this year in 2025. We shouldn't have to wait till the end of January to see Volk. Like, he should have realistically had a fight this year, at the end of this year, and then maybe one more next year, and that's it for Volk. That's honestly how I would have handled him. I think the UFC dropped the ball on here, waiting for this Diego Lopes Jean Silva matchup. Like, I think it was originally scheduled that it was going to be Volk versus Lerone Murphy. Then they were waiting on the Lopes versus Silva matchup. If Jean Silva beat Diego Lopes, I mean, they probably would have pushed Jean Silva to fucking fight Alexander Volkanovski. This is dumb. You know, again, this could be Volk's last fight, and Diego Lopes does nothing for his legacy. And there were also some other rumors around UFC 325 that, you know, Sean Strickland versus Fluffy Hernandez could be the co-main. And then I also saw like Quillen Southkill and Beneil Dariush. Pray for Beneil Dariush could be on that card as well. So hopefully UFC 325 still, you know, fills that nicely. And listen, I still love this. I love this fight in terms of I love both these two dudes. It could play out the exact same way, or we see Volk get fucking chinned and dies. The only reason that fight was close is because Volk has no chin anymore, because it's been vaporized by Islam and Ilia Topuria. But either way, I'm super excited for UFC 324. I'm pissed that UFC 325. That's the matchmaking that we have for. But that's besides the point. Really excited. Again, I'm gonna keep repeating myself. UFC 224 is going to be a banger. Armin should be here, but whatever. Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett is still, you know, a good matchup. Ilia Topuria, please, brother, fix your fucking family situation, and you know, come back soon. I don't really want to see either one of these dudes as champion. But thank you all for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We're gonna keep putting out banger videos. We're gonna probably do like a film breakdown for Marab versus Petr Yan, and then Pantoja versus Joshua Van. But again, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and the doctor is signing off.